Hello, great learners out there. It's your regular host, Zoologist Alan Ibrahim Alpha, the Science Guru. On my channel at Science Guru Exam Drills, I'm here to take you through another journey of NCEE past question review. In this case, predicted or likely questions that you come across when attempting the National Common Entrance Examination. So this segment of the revision covers the section B aspect of the basic science, and it is tagged short answer questions for 30 marks. The instruction says fill in each blank with the correct word or phrase. Each answer carries 1.5 marks. So I need you to grab your pen, notepad, and pay rapt attention. You need to stay focused and fully concentrated on these lessons as we go over them one after the other. These questions are likely questions you come across. So by the time you gain mastery of them by following the illustrations, the analysis, the examples, and other models used in our conversation or discourse, you're going to find it very interesting and it sticks to your memory. Recall, I'm not going to be in the examination hall with you, but whatever you're able to garner from this revision session will be your bridge to pass these exams. This is a short answer question. In other words, what we call subjective questions. For subjective questions, you fill in the blank spaces or empty blanks. You're not provided with options like multiple choices or objective questions. So for subjective question, is for you to be able to read in between the lines, your ability to recall key concepts and those key vocabularies that are used in that concept. You must be familiar with the topic, the subtopics, the examples, and all the terminologies used in such topics in basic science. So let's dive in at this point. Question 1 says, the green pigment found in plant leaves that absorb sunlight is called dash. What do you think is the answer to fill in this blank space? So the key focus here should be the green pigment, that's the green colored substance that is found in plant leaves that absorbs sunlight is called dash. So this will take you back to living things and the environment, then plants and how they feed or manufacture their own food. So this also cuts across the characteristics of living things that is summarized in the acronym Mr. Niger card, where M stands for movement, the first R stands for respiration, N stands for nutrition or feeding, I stands for irritability or sensitivity, G stands for growth, which is the irreversible increase in the size of a living organism, be it plants or animals. E stands for excretion. The second R stands for reproduction. Every living thing must be able to produce its own young one. Then we have the card. C stands for competition. All organisms undergoes competition in the physical environment to survive or to stay alive. Then they also undergo adaptation. That's the A. And the D, of course, every living organism is wired to die. So coming back to the question, from all these references regarding living things and non-living things, then plants and how they feed or manufacture their own food, the green pigment found in plants' leaves that absorbs sunlight is called, the answer is chlorophyll. Now the chlorophyll is contained in an organ in the plant cell called the chloroplast. So from the word chloroplast, you have the green pigment embedded in it called chlorophyll. So this is the green pigment that serves as the surface that attracts or absorbs the sunlight, just the way the solar panel attracts sunlight in producing electrical current. So chlorophyll will store the sun's energy and releases it when there's need for photolysis. It releases the energy of the sun through the process called photolysis in order to carry out the reaction between water, carbon dioxide in the plant body to produce glucose and oxygen as a byproduct. Okay, let's go to question 2. The center of our solar system is what is the answer? Is the sun. The sun is the center of the solar system, or you can call it the reference point of the solar system. So is that taken note of? Write it down in your diary and reflect on it. Going to question 3. A dash is an animal that eats both plants and other animals. This has to do with the feeding relationships among animals and types of feeding. So we have three major types. We have herbivores or herbivorous animals that feed on herbs or plant materials only. We have carnivores that feed only on flesh or meat only. Then we have omnivores that feed both on plant materials and flesh or meat materials. So the question says a dash is an animal that eats both. The reference is both plants and other animals. So we call them omnivores because they are omnivorous in nature. So you call them omnivores from the three major types of feeding in animals. So that fills in the blank space. Question 4. The tiny units that make up all living organisms are called dash. This is taken from the organization or the hierarchy of life. Life begins from cells, moves to tissues. A collection of similar tissues performing similar functions forms organs. A collection of similar organs performing similar functions is conglomerated to form the systems. Then a collection of the 9 or the 12 systems of the body to form a whole multicellular organism completes the organization of life. So the tiny units that make up all living organisms, that includes both plants and animals, are called, the answer is cells. They are called cells. That's the basic structural and functional unit of life of every living organism. They form building blocks that makes up the body, and they are gotten from proteins because proteins are building blocks. So that is done. Now question 5. The three states of matter are solid, liquid, and in this case you feel gas. From my previous video I gave clear or additional illustration that we have gone beyond 3 states of matter to 4 states of matter, and the first state of matter is called plasma in addition. So in cases where questions or examiners request for 4 states of matter, you go by producing solid, liquid, gases, and plasma. If you're asked questions about 3 states of matter, you will supply them with solid, liquid, and gas. So take note of it. Question 6. Dash is the force of attraction between the earth and objects on or near its surface. So the emphasis is the force of attraction between the earth and objects on or near its surface. What is the name of that force called? We have different types of forces: frictional forces, gravitational forces, magnetic forces, moment of a force, centripetal forces, centrifugal forces, and many other forces. But the one that attracts objects to the center of the earth is called gravity. It's called gravity, or you can say gravitational force. You can call it gravity, or I'll write it below here, gravitational force. So you can write that down, gravitational force. Alright, I hope that is noted. So the force of gravity constantly pulls objects to the center of the earth to maintain a particular orbit, and it is the law that governs the rising and the falling of objects. So when you throw objects into space or into the sky, they will fall back to the earth, and this law was discovered by the great Isaac Newton while sitting under an apple tree observing and having a quiet time. All right, you can study further on the discovery of the gravitational force in nature. Question 7. The gas that makes up the largest percentage of the Earth's atmosphere is called dash. What is the name of the gas that makes up the largest or the highest percentage of the Earth's atmosphere? Now there are 5 major types of gases embedded in air. So air is a gaseous substance in the environment, and air consists of 5 components or 5 major parts. One of them is nitrogen, which is the chiefest among all of them. It occupies 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. The second chiefest gases under air, after nitrogen being 78%, is oxygen. Oxygen occupies 21% composition of air. Then the next gas after oxygen is carbon dioxide or carbon 4 oxide. It is 0.03% of the air composition. Then we have trace gases. Trace gases are gases that are in small quantity in air. Then we have what we call the noble gases. So these 5 gases, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide, trace gases and noble gases forms the 5 components of air. So from my analysis, you can already tell the answer. The answer is nitrogen. You know why it is nitrogen? From statistical research, it shows that it occupies 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. I've seen in some textbook where some of the authors says it's 79%. So either of these two is just a difference of 1%, but the first one you will always come across in most textbooks is 78%, or journals, as the case may be. Question 8. The instrument used to measure rainfall is called I guess you know the answer, is called a rain gauge. A rain gauge. Okay, that's what is used to measure rainfall. Of course, it's measured in millimeters. We measure rain in millimeters or sometimes centimeter. Is that okay? Or centimeters, depending on the unit you are going by. Then question 10. When 2 like poles of a magnet are brought together, they dash each other. Remember the laws of magnetism. The law of magnetism states that like poles repel, unlike poles attract. So from that law, like poles repel, unlike poles attract. Just like in electricity, like charges repel, unlike charges attract. So when 2 like poles, that's same poles, north or south, what will be the reaction? It is called repel. After talking about the north and the south pole, sometimes it could go this way, it could go south. You could turn the magnets this way, south north, or it could be north to south. This is in the case where the unlike poles will attract. This is the only condition that will cause attraction between the north and the south pole of a magnet. So attract. Take note of that. I wrote it at the edge so you can note it down in your diary. But in the case where you have the north or the south poles facing each other, in this case, you would have a repulsion, which is what we call repel. R-E-P-E-L, repel. But in a case where you have 2 different poles, either the south facing the north or the north facing the south pole, once you bring them together, the magnet attracts. It will attract to each other due to the magnetic force of attraction, and their magnetic field is very strong. But in the case of unlike poles, they will repel this way. They'll keep going apart. That's repulsion, because they are not compatible and the force of attraction is not enhanced in that case. Question 11 says the change of state from solid directly to gas without passing through the liquid state is called, this under change of state of matter. Of course, matter exists in 4 phases: solids, liquid, gases, and plasma. Different conditions can lead to changes. Could be changes in heat, changes in pressure, addition of heat, changes in temperature in the environment, and other laboratory enhanced conditions. So the change of state from solid directly into gas, that is to say, it does not pass through the liquid state of matter. It just moves from solid and is converted to the gaseous form of that substance. What's the name of the process that qualifies this change? It's called sublimation. Sublimation. This is under separation techniques, where you have filtration, magnetism, distillation, fractional distillation, decantation, sieving methods, chromatography, filtration, and so on. So sublimation is just that process through which solid materials transforms into gases without passing through the liquid state. Question 12. The male reproductive part of a flower is called the dash. The male part or reproductive part of a flower is called dash. From our knowledge of the parts of a flower, we have the stamen, or what we call the male part of the flower. It comprises of the anther and filament. while the pistil in female comprises of the stigma, ovary, and style, or you can say stigma, style, and ovary in that order. Then we generally call the male part of a flower in the scientific notation androecium, while the female part, which is the pistil and those three other parts that make up the pistil, is called the gynoecium. So having said that, does that inform the answer? Of course, I mentioned the male part being the stamen, or you can say the anther. The anther is a part of the stamen, and you also have the filament. But in this case, the male reproductive part of a flower is called you can say the stamen, if you so choose, or you can say the anther. I hope that makes sense. All right, note it down. That's the correct answer to fill in that blank space. Then 13, energy stored in food and fuel is called dash energy. Energy, which is the ability to do work, stored in food and fuel is called dash. What is that energy we derive when we eat food or consume drinks? Could be water and other juices and other drinks in the environment, whether naturally produced or industrially produced. What do we call that form of energy? It's called chemical energy. That's the energy we derive from the foods we eat when they are broken down into energy, which is adenosine triphosphate, and the body uses it for its growth and development through cellular respiration. Now let's move to question 14. The transfer of heat through a liquid or gas by movement of the fluid is called dash. So what is the answer to that question? The answer is convection. Remember or recall, there are three types of heat transfer in nature. This topic is treated under physics in the strands of science. So when heat is transferred through a liquid or gaseous molecules or particles by the movement of their fluid, is called convection. While conduction, on the other hand, is when heat is transferred through the molecules or particles of solids. It's majorly in solids, conduction. Then we also have the third type, which is called the radiation. It's just for additional analysis or knowledge sake. The energy of the sun, which is in form of light and heat energy, reaches the earth in 8 minutes. So imagine that rate of speed when the sun burns the hydrogen and helium gases, producing light and heat energy, and reaches the earth through that vacuum by not passing through any medium, whether solid, liquid, or gases, and reaches the earth in a very quick succession. So that is an example of radiation when heat is transferred through a vacuum or through space. Then question 15. A dash is a scientist who studies living organisms. So which scientist under the branches of science studies living organisms? That scientist is called a biologist. From the Greek word bios and logos. The word bios in Greek means life, while logos means to study. So when you combine the two words together, biology is the branch of science that deals with the study of life. Once again, bios in Greek means life, logos means to study. All right, question 16. The protective layer of a gas surrounding the earth is called this has to do with the different layers of the environment. So we start with the earth crust, we move to the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, we move to the atmosphere, which is the envelope of gases surrounding the environment, which sustains living organisms in the environment, including humans. Then we have the stratosphere after the atmosphere. Then you move to the ionosphere, where the ions are formed. That is the free electrons moving in space, protons and neutrons. And when they collide together, they produce lightning and thunder. So the lightning is the spark they produce when they collide, while the sound they make is what generates thunder in the ionosphere or the upper space. Then you keep going to the outer space. So it's called the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the part of the environment that consists of the envelope of gases. An envelope of gases means there are gases moving or prevailing around the environment in an enveloped form that envelopes the surface of the environment. All right. The type of reproduction that requires two parents is called dash reproduction. It's called sexual reproduction. While on the other hand, we have asexual reproduction. That has to do with the propagation of living organisms without involving the mating of two organisms of different species. And we have different types of asexual reproduction like layering, grafting, budding, and so on, as you can remember. Humans belong to the class of animals called mammals. I believe you're thinking about that already. You processed it, and here it is. They are called mammals. They are from the class Mammalia. That's where you get the word mammals from. Mammalia. So this is where humans and other lower mammals emanate from, but they all belong to the animal kingdom and in the animal domain. The part of the eye that controls the amount of light entering is what is your answer? Is the iris. You can also say the pupil, but the iris is actually the most preferred answer here because the iris is what controls the shape of the pupil in the eye, just the dark spot here and the iris over here, right inside the pupil. Okay, question 20. The SI unit of force is the dash. SI stands for International Systems of Units when you study fundamental quantities and fundamental units in physics. Even in science, we have those fundamental quantities and units. In chemistry, we call it the IUPAC nomenclature, but the SI unit generally talks about the International System of Units that gives units to every quantity in nature. So that of force is measured in Newton. And the reason why it is measured in Newton is because it's named after Sir Isaac Newton, who is a great physicist. You can use the capital letter N as the symbol. Of course, Sir Isaac Newton is a very great scientist, discovered the law of gravity. Then he worked on other aspects of sciences that has to do with the solar system. He also worked on forces in nature, and that's why the unit is named after him, Sir Isaac Newton. Alright, so this brings us to the end of this session. I believe you enjoyed your time with me. I need you to go over this video from question 1 again all the way down by pausing the video at intervals and taking note of why we went for the subjective answer we filled in the blank spaces. With that, you become very much acquainted with what is expected when you come across such questions in the National Common Entrance exams. The Science Guru is out for now. Keep on studying, keep on revising, and the sky will be your starting point. I'm out.